a doctor, I describe this condition as an addiction. It's hopeless. A lot of my friends have it. I have it myself.
Well, he's a very healthy addict and a very enlightened nut.
It's an emotional experience. I've seen hundreds of people entranced.
Anybody can get involved. Engineers, writers, lawyers, janitors, even priests. All it takes is time and money.
Often when I'm driving down a quiet street, seeing all the quiet houses, I look at a house and ask myself, is there one in there?
Back in the 20s, in the golden age of the movie palace, the thundering, sobbing sound of the mighty Wurlitzer was part of the fun of going to the movies. But when talkies appeared, the great organs fell silent one by one. About a dozen years ago, however, a new breed of hobbyists appeared on the scene. And like any self-respecting hobby group, they decided to form an organization. This one calls itself the American Theater Organ Enthusiasts, or to be brief, the ATOE. A few moments ago, we heard their activity referred to as a form of addiction, or an emotional thrill like that of an electric shock. There are others, however, and this includes a number of the enthusiasts themselves, who seem to feel that the whole bunch is just plain nuts. You'd never call Bernie Venus, who lives just outside Toronto, a nut, but Bernie is hopelessly hooked on the theater organ. Would you ever guess that there is one in there? He seems to be wearing an expression familiar to those who know the telltale signs, the preoccupied look of a bulldog hunting for a spot to bury a bone. What's the problem, Bernie?
And we brought it home in one of these big 36-foot tractor trailers, and the wife came out, put her hands up in the air. When she went back in the house, as a matter of fact, I thought she was going to pack her bags. So anyways, we unloaded it, and we had it spread out all over the back lawn. My wife commented on to me then that we would never get it in the basement.
I think when I saw that great, huge truck rolling in the driveway, they had made a mistake. I didn't think it was our organ coming in, not all that. And the junk, I thought it was just junk.
Well, the first that I recall of being interested in an organ at all, my brother had a friend that was an organist in the Christian Science Church. Every Saturday night they used to listen to the hockey game. Right after the hockey game was an organ program. And both their heads went into that speaker. That's when I first remember hearing organ music. And I couldn't figure out what was so interesting about this organ music until my brother explained it to me. And this to me was something different. This is something I'd never heard of before, never seen before, when I decided to get this organ. But at that time, it was pretty hard to find a theater organ. But over the years, I kept looking and watching. We were looking around Buffalo, and we happened to go into the Shea Roosevelt Theater, and here was a couple of fellows working on a big Marr and Colton theater organ. And we discovered that there was a club and people restoring theater organs in theaters. We got involved in this, and they formed a chapter in Buffalo. One of the men in the group is a lawyer, Niagara Falls, and he had bought an organ from Buffalo to put in his house. And he wrote me a letter one day to tell me that he knew where there was an organ for sale if I was interested. So I hightailed it down as fast as I could the next morning. The manager told me that within a week, this organ was going to go. That he'd had enough of people tramping in and out of his theater looking at organs. And he'd had it. So I got to get this organ. This is just the size of the one I want. It's got everything on it I want. But how do I go about it? There's already two fellows with bids on it. So I said to the manager, "Do you like Canadian rye whiskey?" And he said, I sure do. Well, that's fine, because every time I come across the border, I can bring over some Canadian rye whiskey. That I know there's bids on this organ, but I want the organ. So all I want to know is what the highest bid is. And I'll give you $50 over that bid to make sure I get it. I said, I want this organ. And sure enough, a week later, after sweating it out, I got a phone call. He said, I don't know what you're going to do with it, but you got it. We had to have some openings for the sound to come through into the music room. And then I knocked out a 10-foot by 5-foot opening, one for each chamber. And by this time, my wife said, that's enough. So I had one more to do, so I made sure she was going out shopping for the day, and I got busy and knocked the last hole through. And when she came back, she said, you promised. And by this time, we had knocked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 openings through the basement walls.
So I didn't take it seriously. I thought, well, I could change him, like everybody does. I can change him. Last words. He changed me.
Of course, I have an overseer, Mr. Stuart Duncan, who is keeping his eye on me very closely, and he makes sure that everything I do is right. And I am very proud to think that he is part of this organ, because without his help, I don't think I'd ever have accomplished what I have done.
Bernie.
Oh, hi, Stu.
Where are you?
Come over here.
Well, I guess Bernie has had to put up with a lot of problems. I've certainly refused to allow him to have his own way many times.
He won't do anything unless it's done right. He's a perfectionist, and to him the ultimate is the Wurlitzer Theatre organ, the Rolls Royce of organs.
And I have to make decisions on jobs that I'm doing professionally. I have to decide whether things right or wrong. The same thing applies in a case like this. Bernie's technical knowledge of an organ when he started was pretty close to zero. He had a lot of knowledge of their location and specifications and who played them and this sort of thing, but his knowledge of the workings of the organ, I don't think, were very extensive.
I started the organ just 3 years ago, and it's taken just that long to put the organ completely together so that it's to my satisfaction. This is the organ blower here, and it's got a 5-horsepower motor on it, which I had to rewind for 60 cycle because originally it was 25 cycle. And this is the power supply, which gives you all the power for your magnets. And the wind goes up through this pipe here and out through this wall. This wind goes down into these reservoirs here. Now you'll notice the big coil springs on them. This is what governs the different wind pressures. All the hooks for the springs have all been cadmium plated. This is because they were rusty before, and I thought they should be put into a better shape. Even the springs that were black enamel, I put 2 coats of varnish on them to make them look brand new. Taking 3 gallons of varnish now. I think Mr. Farney Wurlitzer would be proud to see this organ because this is the way they came out of the factory. The wind ducts go up from these reservoirs up under the chest. You'll see where they come into the end of the chest. They're all ready for the air to go up into the pipes. Now, from the console, where you activate the contacts for the magnets, which go through the switches and through the relays, these little black magnets under these chests, when you press a key, the magnet draws the little armature up, which lets the air go all the way up through the pipe. And that is how the air gets up through these pipes. Now these relays over here, you notice all the wiring on these relays. There's miles and miles of wire and hundreds of contacts. You'll see the copper common bar on the relays that comes down on these contacts. And there's as many as 30 ring contact wires on some of these relays. Oh, I spend a whole winter working on the switches and relays, just cleaning up the contacts and varnish them all. wring out all the wiring to make sure the wires were all right, tape up all the cable.
Ready now, Bernie.
Give me the sleigh bells, Ed. Give me the chimes, Ed.
Okay.
We're gonna do the pressure. Well, all these percussions are a real mechanic's nightmare when you look at them. It's quite fantastic when you see how much work there is into this thing. That's okay. Give me the harp. Okay, I'm going down to the traps.
Well, these percussions are, of course, fairly rugged devices, fortunately. The fact that they are visible and that the action of them is something you can see actually operating, I think makes a great deal of appeal. And, of course, the sound of them accompanying the action is quite frightening to some people, I suppose.
Chinese gong, made in China and shipped over here for the Wurlitzer Company. They've even got the Chinese symbols on them. And horse's hooves. This was for the Western movies when you had to have a triangle. It's got a klaxon horn for where they had the cars racing up and down. A Chinese block. A set of castanets. There's a tambourine.
Cymbal, boat whistle, a bass drum, a snare drum, bird whistle. It's quite a collection.